Are you tired of feeling overlooked and underestimated? Hi, I'm Tammy North, the Introverted Executives Coach. If you're an introverted executive or you're ready to rise to senior leadership, but you're struggling to be seen as a high potential, this podcast is for you. Are you too young to be a CEO or a member of the executive team? I know this is a thought that a lot of people have about themselves when they're rising in an industry, but I want to tell you that this is technically just a thought. The thought that I am too young to be an executive is a limiting belief. This is mainly because age is not directly a determining factor in the decision when a CEO or an executive leader is chosen. In this episode, I'm going to give you some of the usual criteria that are used in many cases for selecting executive leaders, and also various scenarios by which you could find yourself at the executive level earlier than you expected. Granted, CEOs and other executives do tend to be the oldest people at the table, but that has more to do with the amount of experience they have across their entire career rather than a direct relation to their age. So I looked up a few of the youngest CEOs of major publicly traded companies right now, and Parag Agrawal is Twitter's new CEO, and right now he is the youngest CEO in the S&P 500, but just barely. He's the same age as Mark Zuckerberg, but he's a little bit younger than Mark Zuckerberg. He was just appointed in December 2021 to succeed the Twitter founder, Jack Dorsey. And earlier, Parag had worked for companies like Microsoft, Yahoo, AT&T Labs before he joined Twitter in 2011. And then he was most recently the chief technical officer at Twitter. And Jack Dorsey said the reason that Parag had been chosen as the new CEO is his deep understanding of the company, and that Parag had been behind almost every major initiative that turned Twitter around during his tenure as the chief technical officer. So that explains one of the reasons that he's so young and then was selected. So what is the average age that people typically transition to the executive level? The average age for a publicly traded company C-suite member is 56 years old. But as we already talked about, executives tend to have decades of industry experience behind them before they advance. Yes, so there are people like Mark Zuckerberg who invented Facebook when he was in college, and then Evan Spiegel who invented Snapchat when he was in college, and they are also very young. But most executives put in between 25 and 35 years of middle to senior level management before they make it to the executive table. So overall, the average age of CEOs is somewhere between 56 and 59 years old. Chief information officers is 55 years old. Chief human resource officers are average 55 years old. Chief marketing officers trend a little bit younger, 54 years old. And chief financial officers also trend younger, 54 years old. And a lot of times, the average age of advancement is based on the sector in which the company is. If you look through an industry lens, tech CEOs trend a little bit younger than, let's say, financial executives, for instance. And this is just based on the nature of the sector. In all of those CEOs of the study I got the average ages from, 3/4 of the new CEOs were promoted internally to the organization. And then prior to their promotion, the average tenure within the company was 15.5 years. So that just gives you some background. Also, if you want to talk about the government executives, senior executive service within the federal government, the average age of promotion for that group is 54.6 years. Prior to their selection as SES, the average length of federal service was 22 years prior. 66% of those SES members are male, 66% have an advanced degree, and 24% only have a 4-year degree. So that kind of gives you some focus there. If you want to increase your chances of being an SES, you definitely should get an advanced degree. But it's still not about that. I know people who were at that level who do not have any degree at all, but they were very technically educated and had many technical certifications. So you have to have something complementary or the experience to back it up if you think you're going to rise without a degree at all. So let's talk about some of the considerations when an executive leader is chosen on the younger side versus the older side. And one of the main conversations in that talk is energy versus wisdom. So generally, the younger CEOs specialize in energy. They take risks, they're innovative, they are fresh thinkers. But some of the cons for the younger side is they could overcommit, they're too optimistic, they have unrealistic expectations, or they lack the necessary skill to deliver on all that energy. So then with age, you will usually find the wiser side of leadership, the experience to handle the ebb and flow of life with confidence and grace. But one of the cons of the older, wiser executives is that they may be more complacent, or they may not be open to change. They may make very easy things unnecessarily complex. And sometimes when people are making easy things hard, that is really just a sign that they're trying to not let things change. So as you consider the strengths of either a young executive or an older executive, when taken to an extreme or used inappropriately, the youth or the age could be an Achilles heel. So then rather than worrying about if you'll be seen as too young or maybe even too old, the more important thing is to consider how you as a leader will balance your age-related strengths and weaknesses. So if you are being considered for an executive position, how will you use the fact that, yes, I know I'm younger than the typical person you would promote to this position, but here is why that's good. Maybe you can connect to the customer. Maybe you have a deep technical understanding that the other more senior people won't have. Chief executives under the age of 35 are more likely to succeed both in attracting capital and in long-term performance if they have some reinforcements on their business team with experience, money, etc. I've talked about this before. If you know your strengths are in a certain area, then you should always balance out, your closest part of your staff, your deputy or other person like that you would have that person have balancing strengths. So like maybe something you have as a weakness is something they have as a strength. And that's one of the cases where the younger CEOs have really performed well, is when the other executives around them are able to balance out their weaknesses. So in the book, Crack the C-Suite Code, which I talked about in the past, she talks about Leapfrog Leaders. In the book, she quoted a study conducted by Torres, Hansel, Foster, and Barron titled Leapfrog Successions. A leapfrog leader is a person who's promoted from a lower position in the company than normal. Often it's clear that certain people are being groomed for an executive position, and there's often a pool of potential people to fill future executive positions. So when somebody who is working below that level is promoted unexpectedly above to this executive suite, instead of the group that was actively being groomed, this person is called a leapfrog leader. Leapfrog leaders are one category of people that may contribute to a younger selection for an executive fill. The study in the Crack the C-Suite Code book said that there are two most likely times a leapfrog leader will be chosen. One is when the previous executive that is being replaced stayed much longer than expected, and therefore the next level team may have also aged out. Many of them may have retired or are very close to retiring, or often that next level, because they've been with the same CEO for so long, may be very similar to that long-term CEO, and changing times may call for a different skill set. And the second reason is a CEO's planned departure occurred during a time of great uncertainty. For instance, a company might be facing complex emerging technologies, changing consumer behavior, or other such disruptive and disorienting forces. In this case, the board might look for a leader who understands the dynamics and has the foresight to enter new markets, introduce new products, and acquire new skill sets. When a board is looking for a new executive level person and they are considering somebody that was not in their usual list of suspects, when they're looking for that leapfrog leader type person, some of the characteristics a leapfrog leader might have would be intelligence, integrity, and stamina in abundance, an easy familiarity with disruptive products or services. They probably have a passion and an understanding for emerging technologies, or they have a technical scientific background. They're probably digitally savvy. They're comfortable with social media and the uses of big data. They have a track record of innovation and have skillfully devised and implemented new business models within or outside the company, and they probably have been responsible for introducing new products. They have experience in leading a team of peers or even senior staff more senior than they are, and they've previously had a rapid promotion in the past into a leadership position, and they have confidence as a global citizen. They can operate comfortably in developing and emerging markets, and they can maintain credible leadership across diverse cultures, and they have an understanding of demographic shifts. They're alert to any potentially significant changes in the customer base, age, ethnicity, social class, or professional status. status, and they can shape strategies accordingly, especially for a new customer experience. They have adaptive leadership traits, and they have personally embraced and championed disruptions. They've demonstrated exceptional curiosity. They have self-awareness, social sensitivity, open-mindedness, and they have the courage to take action. So if you want to be a Leapfrog leader, that is a powerful list right there. There's at least 2 risks to Leapfrog leaders. One is the new CEO who jumped over a level of experience may be unprepared for the job. And then second, the executives who were passed over might be disappointed and become disaffected. They could quit at an awkward moment, or they could even try to undermine the CEO. This is not typically the case, but it's just something to be aware of. So then overall, if you are thinking you want to get to the executive level, then I've always found that one of the best ways to understand if you're ready to get to a certain level or to a certain position or to take on a certain job is to take a look at the criteria used to select people for that position and then determine, are there any ways that you personally can grow? So I'm going to put a couple links in the show notes to some criteria for selecting CEOs, and you can just take a look at those. If it's something you're interested in, I find it fascinating to go and look through these types of lists and then just try to rate myself and have my own self-awareness. I'm going to go through a list of a few of these. If you go to the 2 links in the show notes, you'll probably find between 20 and 50 different criteria. I'll just go through a few of them right now. One is having the tolerance for ambiguity. You can stand confusion until things become clear. You have good judgment. You know when to act. You have feelings and inner relationships. I think that would go along with strong emotional intelligence. You do have the understanding and the ability to lead with authority. You are achievement-oriented toward the organization's success rather than your own personal aggrandizement. You're mature and you have good relationships with authority figures. You're articulate and you make a good impression. You have stamina. This is both physical stamina as well as mental stamina. You adapt well to stress. You have a sense of humor and you don't take yourself too seriously. You have a strong ability to have a vision and you understand how to both have a vision for your own life and career as well as where the organization should go, and you are able to execute on that vision, both in your own personal life and to help the organization execute a vision. You have perseverance. You're able to stick to a task and see it through regardless of the difficulties encountered. You have good personal organization and a good sense of time. Integrity, that's a strong one. You have a well-established value system which has been tested in various ways in the past. So those are just a few. There's probably 50 or so if you go to the 2 different links, and you could just Google this and find all kinds. But just consider to yourself, are you building that type of background? Are you building the type of portfolio where you could be measured against a list like that and come out on a strong side? Every executive will not map out perfectly against all the criteria a company uses, but good executives will embody most of these types of traits. Okay, so why is it important for, no matter where you are in the company right now, why is it important to think that you may want to be an executive? And then if you're wondering right now, well, that's 20 years away. If you are thinking you're too young, let's say you're 35 right now. If you're thinking you're too young, you are limiting yourself and it is holding you back. If you do believe that there's any chance that you are on a rising path in your organization, or that you are at least starting to think it's possible that you might be on a rising path, the thought that you're too young or that you're not yet at the level they will choose executives from will not serve you, and it will only hold you back. If you think it's absolutely not possible that you would be chosen for an executive, then you might hesitate to throw yourself in the ring when it comes to opportunities where these decisions will be made, or to throw yourself into the ring when an opportunity which could lead to a decision that you're the right one would be made. So if someone asks you to submit a package to support such a selection for either just an opportunity that puts you more strongly on the path or for an actual executive position, it could take days of time to prepare that package. And if you don't want to take all the time to prepare your part of the package because it's a lot of work, but there's only a very small chance of success that you would actually be the one selected, then you're actually self-selecting yourself out. Sometimes just by going through the process, the interviews, the process of developing your own body of work, not to mention the vetting that goes on in the process, if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else will either. But if you do go through the process, you will see your stock rise, even if you're not the one selected. So instead of worrying about how and when when you will get your chance. Just bring value every day. Build your portfolio in a genuine, purpose-filled way. Focus on the customer while gaining a broad understanding of your overall industry. As I said, I'll put a couple of resources for the sample criteria for CEO selection in the show notes. Go over the criteria and assess yourself to determine if you would live up to the criteria or not. Don't feel bad if the answer is not yet. Just get to work and start filling in your gaps through work at your own organization, through charitable work, or through your hobbies. Just focus on one area for 1 to 2 quarters at a time and build up your portfolio over the next 1 to 3 years. And then step into opportunities and decide that you will embrace discomfort. And before you know it, and perhaps even when you least expect it, your moment will come. You can connect with me at Introverted Executive on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're ready for executive coaching to help you achieve your biggest career goals, subscribe to my weekly Rise and Shine newsletter. There, you'll find out when my program opens for new clients, and you'll also receive weekly tips and activities to continue to make a bigger impact in your own powerful way. You'll find all the information and links down in the show notes. See you next week.